Welcome back, everybody, to our special time machine episode where we ask ourselves, knowing what we know now, what would we do different if we were still 23 years of age? Because let's be honest, money doesn't guarantee happiness, and there is a price to chasing pure wealth, and it's not always rainbows and sunshine. We provide actionable steps, things to avoid, and great stories to really drive home the point of if I had a magic wand-esque type moment, what would I do differently? We're talking life phases, making money moves, and building a foundation for long-term success. So buckle up, grab your free peanuts and your $18 ham and cheese sandwich, and let's get right to it.
It's the Burn Your Boats podcast, Wealth Decoded, with hosts Clark Lunt and David Shaw. 23 again. Hindsight is 2020 to wealth creation.
Podcast time again, Clark.
Let's do it. What do you got for us today, David?
Well, you know what, Clark? We've got a great topic today because as we're going through this podcast, we're getting a lot of different feedback from people. And recently, I had my nephew over. He's a young man. He's 23 years of age. He's just finishing up his final year in university in Ireland, and he's over here in Florida hanging out. And equally, we have a young man who lives here in the Tampa Bay area, recently came to us and asked us for mentorship. He's also 23 years of age. And both of them have asked individually, what would you do again if you were 23? And man, that really initiated. Yeah, it did hit home, you know. It made me think about what would you do again if you were 23? And that's really important advice, let's say, if you are 23 and you get to ask, older folks who may be down the road a little bit further than they are. And so we're going to do an episode about what we would do again if we were 23, Clark. What do you think about that for a topic?
Yeah, it's cool because, we tend to get a lot of feedback, a lot of questions. And a lot of times that's kind of the lens that you're looking through, like, hey, I'm in this part of my life. And we're like, I get it. Like, I've been there in your shoes where it's like, you don't have all the money, you don't have all the experience. We did a whole episode on confidence earlier on, and you don't have that confidence because, the experience that you get breeds confidence, right? And if you don't have the experience, then, you don't have the swings at the plate. And so I think that this is probably one of my favorite topics. They're all like fun topics. I'll be honest with you. Because we're both passionate about this, I think it's easy for us to talk about these things, and it's not forced. Sometimes I hear topics and I feel like they're a bit forced. We haven't hit one yet. So with that being said, David, talk to us kind of a little bit about how you feel about this. You're in a 23-year-old's body. You know what you know. You have all this experience and wisdom and bruises and scars all over your body. You've dealt with all these people over the years with different types of personalities and relationships, and you name it. You're in a 23-year-old body. What are you going to do differently, David? What are you going to do the same? Give it to us. Give us the raw. Give us everything.
You know what? I really do love this. I'm excited about the next hour or so, Clark, because what we're actually going to do is we're both going to take a crack at this. Clark and I see the answer to this question very differently, and I didn't know that we did when we were kind of batting this idea around for the podcast. I laid out my thoughts on it, and Clark's are diametrically different than mine. So hang around here, right? So This is going to be my thoughts on what I would do if I was 23 again. And I'm going to go through what I would do and summarize them and give actionable tips. And then essentially the second phase of this podcast is going to be Clark taking a crack at exactly the same question. So, hang out for all of this podcast if you want to hear a 53-year-old guy getting up on where he is and what he thinks about it, and a 42-year-old guy and where he's at.
You're
40.
stealing 2 years of my life, David.
You know, and
40.
I'm actually 52, so I'm actually adding years to mine. So
You're going the wrong
I'm
way.
52, you're 40. So yeah, you got 12 years to be up where I'm at. And, you know, quite honestly, those 12 years are super important as well. So look, what we're going to do first, we're going to give you those actionable tips. We're going to give you what I would actually do. But we're, you know, first and foremost, if I was 23, I would want to know the following. Really, there's kind of 3 phases to your financial life, and that's just making money, because you need to eat, you need to put a roof over your head, you need to get wheels under your butt, and you need to be able to take your girl out for dinner, and you need to live, right? So that's a money phase. Then we have like a scaling phase. You have money, you've dialed in a few skills, and then you scale, right? But you're not wealthy yet, right? And wealthy is not necessarily a number. Wealthy is when you never have to work again, ever again. So wealthy phase is when you take your money phase, you roll that into your scale phase, then you take your scale phase and you roll it into your wealthy phase. That's where real estate comes in for us, and for me in particular. And so I want you to understand that your life will break out into 3 phases: your money making phase, your scaling phase, and your wealth building phase. But before we get into those phases, super important to understand that money doesn't make you happy. It's just, you know, 5 million might be your number, 10 million might be your number. I can tell you right now, it's actually not a number. For me personally, it's knowing that my income, my residual income, far exceeds my monthly expenses, and I live a, you know, a not frugal, but a prudent life. And so my residual monthly expenses are more than covered by my passive income, essentially. That to me is the goal, not like 5 million or 10 million. I know a lot of people with $10 million are nervous. It's not enough, quite frankly. You know, if you get into 20, 30, 40 million, yeah, you know, that is, if that's your goal, you're gonna, you know, you're gonna pay a very, very heavy price, usually, to get there. And so money doesn't make you happy. You know, big goals like 20, 30 million dollars, when you reach those goals, you will have paid a price. And I know a lot of people who have reached those 20, 30, 40, 50 million dollar goals, but the price that they paid in terms of hard life, stress, anxiety, you know, alcohol, you know, unhealthy living, and all that kind of stuff. That's an important price to pay, right? And you need to, at 23, if I was going forward, I would be very cognizant that there is a price to pay. And so I just talking to a friend this weekend, and I'll say it to you. If you know, this friend is not wealthy and he's got a regular job, and I said, listen, if I gave you $10 million right now, today, and came back and met you 3 years from today, you'll be no happier. I said, what do you mean? I said, you'd be no happier, because as humans, we get used to anything. We get used to any condition, right? You'll be super happy tomorrow, and you'll be super happy next week and the week after, and maybe for the rest of this year, you'll be super happy with your, you know, your 10 million. But in 3 years' time, you'll have normalized it, and you're still left with yourself, your time, your health, your relationships, your personality, all of that. If you haven't worked on those things, you'll be no happier with 10 million or not. So if I was 23, first and foremost, I would tell you that the goal and the number is irrelevant. The journey, your health, your fitness, your time, your relationships, your mental health, your relationship with alcohol, your relationship with your family, being available when your parents are, you know, as you get a little bit older, your parents will, you know, not be as healthy, being able to help them. This is the important stuff that you need to think about at 23. And I know at 23, all you can think about is like, I want to make $100,000 a year, $200,000 a year. And we'll go through the money making phase, the scaling phase, and the wealth building phase. So Clark, I just talked about the value of money and the price of a big number. Do you have any examples, or do you have anything to say on why people start at 23 and they often don't come out till they're 40 years of age? They're just head down and they're just at war for 15, 20 years, and they realize their kids have grown up. They don't know them. They've
Yeah.
got an alcohol problem, and so on and so forth. Do you have something, have you got examples of exactly what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's I like your $10 million reference. If I just gave you $10 million, right? And I see it in my, as I've over the last 8 or 9 years, I've been buying houses. Guess what's one of the easiest houses to buy at a discount where the discount is obvious, and that house, David, is the inherited house. It's super simple. A loved one, typically like a grandmother or a parent, passes away, they give it to the kids, right? That house is usually needs a little bit of work, probably doesn't have like the greatest kitchen or the newest this. And the kids always, 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 not always, but a lot of the time will sell that at a discount because guess what? They don't embrace that house. They didn't bleed blood, sweat, and tears to be able to save up money and buy that house. So they just, oh yeah, you'll give me, that means I don't have to do anything, right? They take the convenient route. And it's no different with the 10 million if you just gave it to someone, right? They didn't work for it. They didn't delay their gratification. They didn't sacrifice for that. So that is, see that so often. And then guess what happens once they get that money? It's the same thing, right? It may be 50 grand or 500 grand or whatever it is. That money, more often than not, I have a feeling gets kind of pissed away. But I think I was listening to, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was listening to a story about a guy. I think he runs like $100 million company, right? This guy probably has all the money in the world, quote unquote, from the outside looking in. He probably has no financial problems, no stress other than his work. And
Right.
they asked him the same question, like, if you were 23 and you could go back to when you started this company, would you do the same thing and go through all the things? And he said, you know what? I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't start this company. And this is a guy that's running $100 million company that he owns, right? So God knows what his net worth is, right? God knows what that company actually would be worth on a scale. And he alluded to the fact that, like, the things that he had to sacrifice personally, he had been multiple divorces, right? He's not very healthy. He doesn't eat very well. He, tends to drink a lot more. Probably he's not winning Father of the Year award. And, you hear those things, and it's like, to your point about, like, money isn't really truly the goal, and the journey, okay, that he went through to get to where he's at. I think the risk was probably higher than the reward. But from the outside looking in, you see this guy, he probably has the newest Lamborghini. He probably has the house on the water. And he was like, no, I think I would give that back to be able to get in that time machine, which is the whole
Right.
reason we're having this episode today. So I
Right.
think that it's very important for people when they're listening to this, is that it's not a dollar figure. Like you mentioned, like, it's not like, oh, I hear it all the time, Dave. How many times do you hear this? I want to get to 10 rental properties. I want to get to $10,000 a month in rental income. I want to get to this. It's not like a specific dollar figure. It's much bigger than that. And to just kind of put it to, well, I need to have $2 million in my bank account. I need to have this amount of money in my bank account, whatever that looks like. It's not really about that. So let's kind of dive into that. That's kind of what spurred on this episode topic. And I think it's really, really important, because now we get to get in this time machine. So let's go back, David. We're in the time machine. You're now 23 years old. I'm 23. I have a full head of hair. All is good in the world. What kind of advice can you give to our listeners today to help kind of focus on some things to be doing right now, where it's so important, and your time, your efforts are going to be compounding so much while you're lean, you're mean, you don't have a lot of debt, you don't have a lot of relationships, kids? What can people be doing? What can they avoid? Give it to us.
All right. We're going to get into the meat and potatoes here, Clark. And thanks for that, because that was a very valuable lesson. So what would we do at 23? Okay, I had a few less gray hairs myself around then. So You know what, 23, you really, you're just coming out of school. You really don't have an awful lot really experience. By and large, I don't think you're the male brain anyhow. It's really fully developed, and it's a very, very frustrating and confusing time for a certain block of people. There's the academic people who, they were just always good academically, and they went to university and they studied something, and it kind of just naturally flow from studying computer science. They finish university, they get straight into like a well-paying job with a company, and let's say a technology company, and they're making $120,000, and they're off at the races. It's not uncommon, however, for those exact people to come back at 35, essentially 12, 13, 14, 15 years later, and they're just morally bankrupt, or bored, or they're going, they realize that there's more to life. So if you were a very academically um gifted, that in a way can be a blessing, but it also can be a curse, right?
Yeah.
And likewise, then you get so that's a certain block of people. They're very academically gifted, and for them, they kind of just drift off into the working world quite easily. I wasn't that person, right? So I didn't belong to that block. But if you do belong to that block, kind of know that you're probably going to rub up against wanting to just, I don't want to be a doctor anymore. I want to open a bookstore. I don't want to be I don't want to be a computer science guy anymore. I don't be, writing computer code for 9 hours slumped in a seat all day. I want to be a fitness instructor. I want to own a gym. It's so common. So just be aware of that. If you are very academic, kind of know that the winds of change will probably be blowing at some point in your mid 30s, right? And if you are in your mid 30s, you're probably smiling at this. Then you get you kind of completely non-academic kind of people who generally didn't finish university, or didn't even go to university, and they kind of fit in, Clark, into the the home services group, right? So guys who go off and they learn trades. There to be electricians, plumbers. Ironically enough, they have an amazing opportunity. So while their friends are off at university, they're finishing up an electrical apprenticeship or HVAC apprenticeship or something like that. And that is like the talk of the institutional capital world right now. They're trying to just vacuum up home services companies. So if you can go get a HVAC license, electrical license, a plumbing license, but be smart enough, get that license when you're 17, 18, 19, 20, get the experience. 21, start, get your first van, get some, get an LLC, get your license, and get that first van on the road, put some branding and marketing around it, grow that to the point where you can't, get to all the jobs that you have, hire a plumber, get a second van, and before you know it, while your friends are in university, leaving at 23, 24, and then they're starting out their career 25, 26, 27, they're really only getting into their career by 28, 29. You could be a multi-millionaire by the time you're that age, if you fall into that non-academic, home services skill group. That's a super, super space to be in. And then, like me, you fall into the cracks somewhere in the middle. You're not particularly academic, but you're not the home services guy who didn't go to college. I did, right? But I didn't want to work for somebody, and I really, quite honestly, wasn't a great worker, right? But I was entrepreneurial, right? So I fell into that crack in the middle. And entrepreneurial people are people who generally in their young, 23, 24, they don't really know where they're going. They have a lot of angst. Like, I don't want to get a plumbing apprenticeship. I don't want to go, a junior, a middle management type of, corporate employee where I knew I wasn't going to be in the C-suite. So if you're corporate and if you're 23, 24, and then you're very quickly going to get into upper management. You can make a lot of money that way. Stay there, follow that path. If you're a home services type guy, plumbing, trades, stay there, but scale it. But if you're me and you're maybe it's 35% of us at 23 are the, I don't know what I want to do, right? So I fall into I don't know what I want to do category. So let's go from that intro into what would I do at 23. The world is very different now than it was when I was 23. When I was 23, I had just left university. I was in San Francisco, and there was no such thing as the internet. San Francisco itself was a city with hippies and so many people just walking around with guitars on their back and smoking pot. And, it wasn't at all the place that it is now. And so when I was 23, I just left university. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And it took me a long time, quite honestly, to find my feet, and I'm not going to go through my biography. I'm going to go through what I would have done differently if the time was now in 2024, my 23-year-old self. Here's what I would do. Okay. Number one, I would learn a scalable skill. Scale is so important. There are a number of points of leverage. You can learn marketing and you can scale yourself. So scaling fundamentally is where you do something and then hundreds of other people can use it, right? So to be a landlord, I can only one of me, but I can own 100 houses. Those 100 people go out and work every month and they give me 35 to 40% of their income. That's me scaling to 40 other people. So real estate is a fantastic way to scale, right? Marketing is I can make a TikTok video and I can reach 1 million people from my bedroom, right? That's a scalable skill. Technology, I can look at a problem and fix it for millions of people. That's a scalable skill. Or people skills. I can just have me to the point of the plumber example. I got me, I'm a plumber, but I can scale out other plumbers. And so first and foremost, don't do anything at all that's not scalable. It should fall into one of those categories. Real estate, marketing, technology, or people. And each one of those you can scale yourself. So, but of those, what I would learn if I was 23, because real estate requires a lot of work, knowledge, and capital. Technology requires a lot of skills, and people requires a lot of leadership, managerial skills. The lowest hanging fruit in all of that right now, in my world, is marketing. So learn marketing and branding and sales. You can do it right now. You can stop this podcast, go on the internet, get a deep understanding of marketing. How do I market something? How do I reach 100,000 people? How do I pay to reach 100,000 people? You have to have something to sell them. So then once you have something to sell them, how do I onboard sales calls? How do I set sales calls? How do I convert sales calls? And then how do I sell sales calls? And then I have a product. The product must be scalable. It must be something you can get millions of, right? So there's no limit to it. I find fundamentally real estate flipping, because that's what I did, it's hard to scale. You can do 1 flip, 2 flips, 10 flips, but it's really hard to do anything more than 100 flips a year. It gets really, really tricky. You need a big company and a big business and a lot of capital, and you need to have the environmental and financial worlds all need to be blowing in the right direction. So if I had to go back right now in 2024, I would learn branding, marketing, and sales, right? Then I would learn how to source or build products. So I would look at something that's out there. I would say, I think I could do it this way, or I could do it that way. And I think that would sell. So I would learn how to source products that are scalable. So that if I can sell one of them, the only difference between me selling 1 million of them is just an email and some capital, right? So I would learn how to source products. I would learn to build my own products as well. Things like you can build your own prototype and have it built in China and delivered en masse. or you can see a product and you just think it's badly branded, and you just rebrand it, and you can, do that, and you can, sell unlimited amount of your new brand. But you can build your own products, things like coaching, something that you know a lot about. So let's say you get a big following on TikTok or on Facebook. Well, guess what? There's millions of people who will pay you to learn how you did it. So I would learn how to build a coaching company, because let's say there's a lot of skills. Let's say even we could sell, like we could put a coaching course together about how to renovate and flip 100 homes a year, how you can certainly make $1 million a year through renovations. Or we could, coach on how to build a buy and hold portfolio of 100, at least 100 doors. Or we could learn how to source capital to do your real estate deals. There's a lot of people who would pay us to join those coaching classes. You could build a mastermind group, right? But, a 23-year-old is unlikely to grow a mastermind group. But I'm trying to get across the point that within a 23-year-old, if you've got something that's unique about you, you'd be amazed how many people will pay you to learn about it. So once you have the branding, marketing, and scaling down, you can then sell and brand other products, or you can start building products around yourself, right? And then I've always said capital, particularly in the United States, is easy to get for good products. So don't say, I don't have the money. Have the plan and have the action, and the capital will find you. You never have to worry. So that's what I would do to make money, to put food on the table, to, put a roof over my head. But that's only phase one, right? So that's just what I would do right now in 23. Then phase two is a super interesting phase. Phase two is when you've done it. You've learned your branding, you learn marketing, you know how to sell something, and you learn how to find a product or build a product. Now, this is where it gets, this is the big part. Now you have the capital, and more importantly, you have the know-how to go out, and I would learn how to buy existing businesses, because most businesses fail in the first 5 years, right? The businesses that are tangible, they have longevity, they have a good book of business, and they are stable and they're well run, are businesses that are 5 years or older. And guess what? Right now, in 2024, there's a whole generation of baby boomers about to retire. And I think there's something like 43 million businesses that are going to be sold in the next few years.
That's crazy.
But that is crazy. But you got to have, there's a concept called buy, then build. So that's why I said started off with branding, sales, marketing. What most of these businesses are, they're stable, they got great clients, but they're lacking marketing, branding, technology, and sales skills. That's what most of them are lacking. So you get these kind of older folks that are selling their great businesses. So you use a small business association loan, an SBA loan. You buy the business, use it. 90% of your acquisition cost is covered by an SBA loan. You put down 10%. You buy this business, typically for, let's say, 3 to 5 times earnings. So just for fun, let's go 5 times earnings. So you're going to buy a business, and just for fun, it throws off $1 million in EBITDA. EBITDA is basically, profit before interest and taxes. Okay, just in a nutshell. So this business throws off $1 million. So typically, you'll buy this business for $5 million. Okay, throws off $1 million a year. You jump in on top of that with your sales, marketing, and branding skills, and you get that. You go from 1 million in profits to 2 million in profits. Let's say over a 3-year period. And all you're doing is you're taking an existing business that has a great footprint, great reputation, great people, and you put sales, marketing, and branding on top of it, and you double revenue. right? Now, that business that you put, $50,000 down or $100,000 down, SBA put the rest down. You bought it for 5 million. You double that revenue. Guess what? Guess how much that business is worth now? That business is worth $10 million. And let's say you put down 200,000. I'm not doing the math in my head right now. So you put down 200,000. You've just made, you pay off your loan. In 3 years, you've just made $5 million. So phase 2 is when you learn those initial skills and then you start buying businesses and flipping them. So you can grow acquired businesses and sell them at a massive profit, or you can hold on to them for income. They're really super passive. You can, get in there, put your sales, marketing, branding, and you can resell them, or you can hold them. But there is massive profits to be made in going in, acquiring businesses, layering in branding, sales, and marketing that, the older generation just quite simply pass them by for the most part. And that is phase 2. When you sell your acquired business that you bought for 5 million, but you didn't put all that much down, and now you just sold it for 10 or 15 million, you now have $10 million. What do you do with that $10 million? We move on to phase 3. So now you've just exited a nice sale. Take that $10 million and you roll it into real estate and you go to the beach. And there you roll it into unencumbered real estate or stocks or dividends or private capital or royalties, something that throws off a lot of income, because you have enough money. You don't need money anymore. You don't need to go from 10 million to 30 million. Depends on who you are, but we're talking to 23-year-olds. So 10 million is a nice bit of actual capital, and you use that money to buy yourself an income, and you never have to work a day again in your life. And that is what I would do if I was 23. Now, what are the actionable steps here for a 23-year-old? Right? Number 1, learn branding, sales, marketing, how to take, sales calls, how to scale your sourcing and product line, right? So learn all of those skills, right? Listen to podcasts like Alex Hormozy. If you don't currently listen to Alex, listen to Alex Hormozy. He talks about this stuff all day long. Listen to Cody Sanchez. A good shout out to Cody Sanchez. She talks about this all day. She has a great podcast called The Struggle Isn't Real. So if you're 23 and you're freaking out about the direction, listen to these people. This is not hard. This is what I'm trying to say. This is not super difficult. Don't stress. So learn sales funnels, marketing, right? Learn how to source products in China. There's lots of people out there. Learn how to use VAs, right? That's a really simple skill, right? Learn how to sell products on platforms like Shopify and Amazon, right? So build your marketing and products around yourself initially. So if you're 23, 24, what do you want? What do you like? What do you think would do well in the world? And don't be afraid to tinker. Don't be afraid to pivot. Don't be afraid to drop something if it doesn't work. Don't forget. And then you will find you got to smell what sells. One day you'll hit on something and it will just go, it'll hockey stick. The sales will just hockey stick. It'll just go, parabolic for you. And then boom, that's going to make you some money, which will allow you to do phase 2, and phase 2 allows you to play in the game of real estate phase 3. And so my key takeaways are, look, money doesn't solve any of your problems. Nice to have, a number, but there is a cost to putting your head down and just stressing yourself out beyond belief, right? Learn valuable, scalable skills, but don't get stressed in your life, please, right? Don't let stress kill you. Take care of your health. Invest in now. Always know that you're at the best physical health of your life right now. You wake up in the morning, you feel great, you've got the energy. Don't convert that energy into negative energy. Create that energy into positive energy. know that you're going to be okay. Right? A lot of people are just in this kind of mortal fear that they're not going to make it, or that they're going to get left behind. If you learn the skills that we just talked about and really valuably step, through those 3 phases, you're going to be fine, right? Education, it's super valuable. But in my view, certain skills, AI is going to come in and it's going to disrupt a lot of these academic, careers. And so, education is great, but I just think it's changing. I could be wrong, right? And as I say, traditional corporate success can still be a path, but consider alternatives if you are not the person who's going to get to the C-suite, right? If you are C-suite material, knock yourself out, you're going to be very wealthy, right? I would say focus on, learning skills, acquiring businesses, applying those skills to the business, then get into then take that capital, go into real estate, and have all of the real estate and all of the various income streams with your newfound wealth, and then sit back and focus on your kids, focus on traveling, focus on your wife, focus on your health, and do not stress yourself out during this journey. Don't sell your soul for money. Clark, that's my 10 cents. Are you ready to take on what you would do if you were 23?
I'm ready. I've been stretching over here, ready. So a lot of those things, I agree with so many of those things. And, I think that I was just listening that like I was just a listener, right? And not a co-host. And to me, it's, you have to take action, David. You have to take some risks. You have to take action. And if you're just wanting to be led by someone and just say, hey, I'm just going to go work at this job, and they're just going to kind of tell me where to point the fire hose, and I'm going to clock out every day at 5:30 p.m. and not worry about it, and then just clock in the next day and can't wait till Friday, when it's 5 o'clock somewhere. If you have that mentality in your 20s, your 30s are not going to be that much different, So it's you have to be very purposeful in your 20s, because those efforts and skills that you get start to compound. And if you're starting to compound those efforts and skill sets that you learned at 25, by the time you're 35, you're so much further ahead than if you just like, all right, I'm just going to go so I can get to the weekend and party and do all the things and go to the beach, whatever that looks like. You have that mentality. It all starts up there. So, I appreciate a lot of the things you said. One of the things that I definitely disagree with you about is that I think nowadays, being a plumber, being an electrician, it's like I've seen so many memes out there where they're going to be like the new class because there's so few plumbers, right? There's so many people that don't want to do the dirty work, right? And it's just going to get, every time you call, your faucet is broken or your toilet needs to be fixed, that plumbing bill is going to be like $600, and you're going to complain and bitch about it. And guess what? You're going to call the next guy and it's going to be $650 to fix that toilet, right? So that demand and that need for those trades is so high. However, I had a front row seat at a home improvement company for 8 years with my parents. They owned a window and door company. I've spoke on it briefly before in previous episodes. And as a 23-year-old, right? We're not talking to a 33-year-old per se on this episode. As a 23-year-old, I watched a lot of 23-year-olds, David, that were the best window installer. They were the best door installer. They knew how to do all the things. They knew how to troubleshoot it, right? And guess what they did? They looked at their pay sheet at the end of the week, right? And they're like, I got paid like $50 to install that door. Yet the company charged $2,000 to install that door. And they're like, well, I know who's making money on this door installation, and it's not me. And I know how to do it, and I'm the one that's doing all the work, right? And I watched those guys leave and girls leave. And there were some girl installers, by the way, too. So I watched them leave, and they started out and they went out on their own, 25, 26, 27. And guess what? Almost all of them, I would say 90% of them, failed quickly. Okay. And why did they fail? Is because they didn't understand business. Just because you know how to install a door, install an AC unit, install a whatever, or if you know how to sell, I know how to sell doors, because that's where I spent most of my time, was in the sales. that doesn't mean I know how to run a business. Okay. And so where I tend to push back on just being 23 and getting your own truck, the minute you get your own truck, right? What people don't see is the risk behind that $2,000 thing. They don't see the building rent. They don't see paying the secretary to answer the phones. They don't see the paying the bookkeeper to keep the books there. That $2,000 where they're only paying the installer 50 or $100 or 200, whatever it is. There's so much built-in overhead that they don't see, that they're blinded by that, and they're blinded by the fact that there's so much more risk built in as the owner of the business that they don't see. So if I was 23, right, and I had the skill set to be, I'm a really good plumber, I would literally go and focus on, go to the owner of a plumbing company, right? I'm going to keep with that analogy. And I would be very intentional to say, look, how can I help you build your business? Because I want to be where you're sitting someday. Okay. Now, you can do it one of two ways. You can approach it from a standpoint of kind of like, I'm going to leave if you don't give me this promotion or if you don't help me, right? Like it's more of a threat. Okay. That's one way to do it. I don't know. You're going to catch a lot more flies with honey than vinegar, right? So not exactly the way I would recommend it. Or you can go to them and say, look, in 5 years, I want to own my own business, right? I want to learn. I want to do this. How can I help you? What are the weaknesses in your company? Okay. Where if you could wave a magic wand that I could come in and help fill that gap to maybe open you up, free up more of your time. Because a lot of these are, like, to your point, they're all small businesses, right? Like the owners of the company are not sitting on the beach just checking an email once a day, right? These owners, more often than not, in these small businesses are knee deep every day firefighting. You know, they got their marketing hat on from 8 to 8:30, and from 8:30 to 9:30 they're dealing with warranty issues and all these different things, right? So I feel like that if you as a 23-year-old, and maybe you had some skills as this plumber, right, and said, hey, Mr. Owner, I have so much respect for what you've built, the quality of whatever you sell, the reputation, right, the branding of this product. I want to be where you are. How can I help you get there, and what can I do, and what are your weaknesses? And then you're going in from a standpoint of helping them, which will then in turn help you to be able to get those skill sets, to be able to watch, okay, I see the systems in place. I see that, you know, who they order from. I see the bookkeeping side of it. I see all the different people and the departments and how they hand off to each other, right? So it's the most efficient way possible. And I think if you take that mentality, you're not going to be having your own truck by 23. You can have your own truck at 23, driving around with, you know, Tom's Plumbing on the side. But the chances of you failing are a lot higher than if you're 33, right? And now you have kind of the blessing maybe of the owner. Maybe you can even buy that business from the owner as they're maybe, you know, getting older. So I think that is the first. I think your 20s are such a time for you to be, you're hungry, you've got energy, right? You've got the ability to want to be a sponge. So if you can utilize that motivation and energy to help build something bigger than yourself with someone else, and then but being intentional and saying, look, I want to be where you're at. I'm not going to do anything other than exactly bringing you this, but I want to be in 5 to 10 years. I want to be running my own trucks. But I need to learn things more than just how to be the best plumber, because there's plenty of great plumbers out there that have crappy businesses. They don't show up in time. They don't know how to train their employees. Their books are a mess, and it's a nightmare. So that's where I would push back on that, is that I don't think that you should just go out and start your business at 23. Now, are there born entrepreneurs that just have a lot of those skill sets? Yeah. You know, are these guys that know how to do that? But I think the majority of the people need that training time to be able to, like, observe, maybe work in different departments. So maybe you're the plumber for 2 years, but then you move into management where you're managing plumbers, which is a totally different skill set than installing a toilet, right? So then maybe you spend a little bit of time with bookkeeping. Maybe you spend a little bit of time with the upfront admin office, answering phone, dealing with customers that are just a pain in the butt, and they, you know, the customer is always right and they want everything. That's a whole different skill set, right? So now you have a much better, broader sense of what a company is, and not just being able to be the best toilet fixer out there. So that's something that I would certainly recommend. And I genuinely think, though, that if you can focus on saying, okay, I think I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to do this. Being able to go to a small company with that mentality and saying, I want to help you get to the next level is a big deal. And I ultimately think that it'll get you quicker into buying and acquiring a business, because you may guess what happens when you are working for a operator and they maybe want to retire. Guess what they're probably going to offer you is probably some owner financing, right? So maybe they may carry some of the paper. Maybe they may stay on as a consultant, which you may or may not want, right? Maybe they tend to limit your beliefs a little bit because it's not the way they did it. So that I would take that with a grain of salt, right? So anyways, that's what I would do on that. Other quick things is a lot of times you get out of college, you're like, what the hell am I going to do with my life? What do I want to be when I grow up, right? I kind of had that same thing when I walked out of my last college class with a degree in broadcasting, right? I thought I wanted to be in broadcasting, and I didn't even apply for one broadcasting job, ironically enough. So it's like, what do you want to be? I'm a big proponent of taking like personality tests, like the MIGS or the Myers-Briggs test. I'm much more familiar with DISC, which is a profile test that helps you to kind of identify what it is that you're good at, what you like, and then things that are just super heavy for you. And then being able to know where to point the fire hose. A lot of times with entrepreneurs, I think that they tend to be willing to go out and maybe take some risks, things like that. They're usually willing to talk to people. They're willing to ask for things. A lot of times that lends itself to sales. I don't think there's any faster way to make money quickly in your 20s than just getting a good sales job, where the ticket size item is probably above maybe 5 or 10 grand. My average ticket size that I sold for 8 years was about $8,000 or $9,000. You know, if you're making 10% on that, you can sell 100,000 a month, 200,000 a month. You can do the math. You know, you're going to be in six figures pretty quickly. And to your point, stage one, you got to make money. Like you got to be, look, you can have super talents to be able to just raise other people's money, but not everyone wants to give money to a 24-year-old, right? That looks like he just walked out of the frat house, right? And you just don't have that credibility built up. So I think being able to quickly get as much money as possible. I don't know any other way to do it other than sales, unless you have some very unique skill set where you're an engineer out of college, or you're going into pre-med, but then you're into medicine, which you're going to be in school for a lot longer, all the way through your 20s. So that is something that I would recommend, is doing a DISC, DISC profile. It's kind of a simple thing. It takes like 30 minutes to take, and it'll tell you a lot about yourself that you might have known or may not have known, or maybe it just helps to confirm what you already know. So just a couple other things too is, first thing you need to do when you walk out of college is being able to save up some money as quickly as possible and buy a house. I preach it all the time. I would definitely buy as big of a house as possible, a 3 or a 4 or 5 bedroom, whatever that looks like, and cram as many of your buddies into that house to be able to help you pay rent. I talk about house hacking all the time. It enabled me in my early 20s to be able to live. I think I lived, David, for like $300 a month, something like that. I mean, it was ridiculously cheap. So it's like, how do I make more money? But also too, how do I lower my expenses? Like, how do I keep when I go and I pay my cable bill from Spectrum Cable, right? Does Spectrum Cable care how many people are staring at that TV and they charge me per person? Or do they just say, hey, your address is this, it's $100 a month, right? So if I have 5 roommates, now my cable bill just went from $120 a month, right? The same thing with power. Power doesn't triple if you have 3 roommates, or water, right? So being able to lower your expenses at the same time while you're trying to make money is, in essence, you're making more money because of that. So again, you can walk and chew gum at the same time. You got to have a place to live. Go buy a house. Interest rates are high. We've got a whole episode that we talked about ways to be able to get into a property right now. But again, you have to take action. Like, you can't just sit around and think that some realtor is going to save you and just send you the deal of a lifetime that's listed, right? And so I'm not going to go into that any further, but whatever you can do, whether you need to borrow some money from someone, maybe you need to get on a Facebook group and say, hey guys, who will lend me $25,000 for a down payment, and I'll pay you X amount per month because of it. Again, they're not going to just flood your inbox. You have to ask for it. Okay. You have to take action. So a lot of the things you mentioned, so many good things about business. I look at this question slightly different from the standpoint that if I was 23, again, it's more than just business, right? It's like mentality, it's health. There's not a lot of people, I think you may have heard the story where it's like the guy that's like dying, right? And he has all this money. And you ask him, well, do you wish you made more money? Of course, he or she is not going to say that. They say, I need more time, right? So we need to make sure that we are taking advantage of every minute of our time. And a lot of that, how do you extend your time? Well, how do we keep the stress down? How do we exercise more? How do we eat healthy? I look back, one of the things that I think that I would have done sooner is I've always cared about, I grew up playing sports, so kind of exercising is kind of in my blood. These are just small things, but I always just went to the gym, right? And I'd put my headphones on. I wouldn't really talk to anyone or I'd say hi to my buddies. We'd shoot the shit. But for the most part, I was just there to get my workout in. One of the things I've noticed in my 30s and now I'm 40 is joining like group classes, whether it's CrossFit or it's F45 or Orange Theory. There's a ton of group classes. Is that I've noticed that you meet people much quicker. Yeah, it's a little bit more expensive, but it puts you in a place where you're networking, you're accomplishing so many things, right? You're getting a great exercise, you're meeting other like-minded individuals that are also going to spend $100 or $200 a month to go to this group class. And guess what? If they're there at 6 a.m. working out with you in some group class, they're probably out there hustling and trying to build their own business and doing a lot of the things that you mentioned earlier on this podcast. That's probably someone that you should know, right? You're not going to meet that person at Gold's Gym, right? You're not going to meet that person at LA Fitness or Crunch, where everyone just puts their headphones in, they get their normal workout in. So I know that if I wish I would have went back and in my time machine is instead of just joining a normal gym, go to the gym. It's so important. But also I would have maybe gone into like a group fitness setting because I've met so many people through the group fitness thing. And it's something where you do it as a team, right? You go through a workout and you're able to finish it. It was hard. You can complain about it together and say, oh God, that was the hardest workout, but you did it together. So now you have this like camaraderie, like, oh, remember last Thursday when we did, X, Y, and Z workout? Oh yeah, I remember that. Those conversations then evolve into other, like, hey, what do you do, by the way, David? Like, I see you out here, you're here every morning at 6 a.m. Tell me more about it. But now you have this like credibility together. So that's another thing I would do. Another thing too, which kind of comes in the same thing, is I invested a whopping $0 into myself in my 20s when it comes to furthering my career, right? So I had no problem spending $30 a month at the gym, but never in a million years would I go out and pay for like coaching or a mentor or something like that. And eventually you keep getting to the point where you're like, I need a personal trainer, but that needs to be like a business trainer, right? And that is something that they hold you accountable. And even just putting yourself in rooms where other people are facing similar challenges to you, and you're like, shit, I'm not the only one facing this challenge. But wait, the guy over there faced that challenge already like 2 years ago. Hey, can I just skip this chapter of the book of life and we just tell me the answer to the test so that I can not go through the same agony and pain that you went through for 2 years? Putting yourself in those rooms and those masterminds is just so important. It helps with your mindset. It helps you to feel like you're not alone. Me and you've talked about this a lot about, entrepreneurship is lonely. It's like you're whether you're at the top of the mountain or climbing the mountain, like it gets lonely. And so being able to like surround yourself with other like-minded individuals going through that same slog of just pushing that boulder up the hill. And there's some days the wind is blowing down the hill, and some days it's at your back, right? So I think that I heard something one time, and at first it sounded very selfish to me. It sounded very superficial, is that when you're in mastermind rooms, when you're in kind of like group coaching settings, is that you're not paying for who's in the room. You're not paying for who's talking to you. You're paying to keep people out of the room, the naysayers, the ones that are going to doubt your ideas and your dreams. Like, they're going to tell you every reason why that is an idea you shouldn't do, because they're putting their own fears onto what you're doing, right? Whereas if you're in the room and everyone's like, okay, here's an idea. How can we make this work, right? That is so powerful. because we all have friends, we all have family where we're like, hey, I think I'm going to do this. And like, oof, that sounds dangerous. You're going to buy real estate now? Oh my God, 8%. Who you're going to be at the top of the market, right? Why would you do that, right? Well, if you hear that enough, I don't know. I'm not going to be super excited to want to go out and take that risk if I keep hearing all the reasons why I shouldn't do it. Masterminds, group coaching, being around other like-minded individuals are going to help pick you up and give you help and reasons to do it versus it's very easy to find a reason not to do something, right? Because if I take that mentality, then why would I go to the gym? Because I'm not going to look any better when I walk out of there, right? So who cares? What's just eating a large pizza on a Sunday? It's just one day, you know? It's that compounding effect of all those things, whether it compounds up or it compounds down, right? So, and I'll leave you with the last thing. And again, these are a little bit more lifestyle. Is I think that I've always been driven, but when I'm the least driven is after a long weekend of drinking alcohol. You know, just to put it out there, my whole life has been surrounded. When I think of fun and hanging out with buddies, guess what's right there falling behind it? And that's a shot of tequila, David. And so I think that if I could go back in time, I'm not preaching to you listening saying, don't drink alcohol, right? Don't do whatever it is that helps you to feel different about things. But it's like, how can you kind of just like limit it, right? Instead of like, I know that when I was in my early 20s, like Friday and Saturday nights were definitely on my agenda to go out, have drinks with friends, go to bars, meet people, probably throw in a few Wednesday night happy hours or Thursday night, ladies' nights or whatever that looks like. If you can say to yourself, okay, I usually want to go out Friday and Saturday. So you're listening to this right now and you're like, every Friday and Saturday, I don't go out to celebrate anything. I just go out to celebrate that it's Friday. Okay. And that's not really the greatest thing to celebrate because it's Friday and you're done with your job for the week. Maybe if you said, instead of drinking 2 nights a week, I'll drink 1 night. So every week I'll just drink 1 night a week. That you have no idea how much that will compound drinking 4 less times a month. How much money will you save? How much more time will you have? How much clear-headed you'll be because you did that? How much more time will you be able to devote to finding that side hustle, being able to go work on that Saturday, learning new skills at the plumbing company, learning a new skill set? So it frees up your time, it frees up your budget, so you just have more money, more cash to do things with. It gives you a more clear head. It's easier said than done. I get it. I certainly enjoy being in lots of social settings, and guess what comes with social settings is a nice bartender over there ready to serve me up my whatever drink of my choice. So I would say that I'm going to leave it at that, David. Is those are the things that I would tend to want to do in my 20s that maybe would have helped propelled me to do it sooner. But I know that my exercise routine has always kind of counteracted the alcohol a bit, so that, but as you get older, the exercise doesn't counteract the alcohol as much. So I need to, and I have done a better job of limiting it. So, to kind of summarize, you're 23, go buy a house as soon as you can, because guess what? The first one is the hardest. The second one's a little bit easier. The third one's even easier, right? But you can't start if you're just renting an apartment and you're 30 years old. Okay. Get help through mentorship. Ask how you can help. So there's a bunch of people I see all the time where they're like, hey, who wants to mentor me? And it's like, well, geez, I can't imagine everyone's not just jumping to like mentor you for free. It's not like it makes it to where it's very selfish. So always come from a standpoint of, what can I do to help your business? What can I do to save you time so that you can start working on $500 an hour tasks while I'm there working on $20 an hour tasks to free you up? What can I do to help you in your business? Which in turn, you're like an intern, you're helping. You're probably going to get paid for your time. Look at it. How can I help you first before you help me, instead of being selfish and saying, you raise your hand, hey guys, I need this. I'm 25. I want to take over the world. Who wants to just give me all their knowledge for free? And even more important than their knowledge is their time. David, we just spent like the next 4 hours just like telling me how to buy real estate, and just stop whatever you're doing. I know it's super important, but I'm 25. I don't really want to go through all the struggle that you did. That's what you're saying when you're like, hey, who's just going to mentor me? And help me cut out all the hard work and things like that. That turns a lot of people off.
Right.
And they're like, you know what, buddy, like, go bark up some other tree, and I'm not the one for you. So I'm going to end it with that, David. What are your thoughts? I did a lot of talking, but it's something that's a passion of mine. And I want to be able to help a lot of people not make a lot of the same stupid, dumb, knucklehead mistakes I made.
Well, that's just great, Clark. I love that you have a very, tangible and real bit of experience to offer there. Two parts that I would just some quick statements, and then we'll wrap this up. Number one, what you were just talking about adding value. Go if you're 23. Read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I think everybody should read that, but also read How to Make Friends and Influence People.
Yep.
It will profoundly change your empathy in every conversation that you have, so that you get what you want by providing value. Clark, you skipped over if you would do real estate again, and I'm not going to ask you to get deep into it. I'm just going to ask you to ask, would you still do real estate again? Because I'm cognizant we need to wrap up here.
Real estate is the reason I'm sitting here right now. I think it's the most low hanging fruit. I kind of flipping houses is a job. It's very difficult to make it into a scalable business. To your point, it really needs to be scalable, but it's a hell of a job. It pays pretty well. It's kind of stressful, but it leads you into. Go ahead.
No, I'm so sorry. I just feel I shouldn't have interrupted. I'm so sorry if I did. But I haven't worked a day in 20 years. In my view, I haven't really worked. It's enjoyable. Real estate is something that we have not discussed at length in this podcast, quite intentionally, to just like, what would we do for 23? I'm looking at your notes here, Clark, at what you wanted to cover, and real estate is something that you would still do. In my summary, I did not. I got to the real estate at phase 3 intentionally, and that's because real estate's a great way to enter in phase 1. Don't be a realtor, I think is your main point. Get straight into multifamily. But real estate is still something you would do in phase 1, is in to make money. The reason why at 23 real estate is kind of hard to get into, where you're on the real money side. When you're 23, you're probably going to get into real estate on the employee side. You're probably not going to come straight in and start buying houses unless you do. And so to your point, surround yourself with people who do buy houses, and you'll realize it's not some magic potion. Just get into the rooms where that's normalized. Your Aunt Loretta is not going to tell you to go buy houses, right? Who's bought no houses in her life, right? So get into those rooms at 23 where people do buy houses, like candy bars, right? And then you'll learn very quickly that that's normal. And so we don't have the time, but without going any further into that, Clark, looking at your notes, you would still get into real estate, right?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's our passion. It's the compounding effect in its greatest sense, in that it being able to hold real estate is certainly something that I'm very passionate about. How you get to holding it, whether you're the plumber, whether you're doing a drop shipping company, whether you're fixing and flipping. Obviously, if you're in kind of the planting the seeds and digging ditches of real estate, whether you're wholesaling, whether you're flipping houses, it tends to make it easier to be able to find that deal and peel it off for yourself in the buy and hold space, which is what we preach, is to holding real estate and not necessarily trading out of it. So it's easier for sure. But there's potentially ways, there's a ton of different ways to make active income where you're not even involved in real estate and in an active sense, but always, always, always in a passive sense.
Right. So you can make money when you're 23 in phase 1, and potentially in phase 2 in real estate, where you could go, you work for somebody, learn how to buy, learn how to be a wholesaler. We cover this in other podcasts, so we're not going to go too deep into that. So if you're 23, you'd still do real estate. You should listen. If you are 23 and you are listening to this, and you want to know more about real estate investing and how to get started and how to move through those different skill sets and phases, we cover that in lots of episodes, so we're not going to do it today. And with that, we're going to wrap up. We're here over an hour. We hope that you have taken notes. If you are somewhere in your 20s, we use 23 as a moniker, but if you're somewhere in your 20s, we hope that you have taken some value and some direction. I'm quite firm on, the approach I would take. Clark has given a lot of lifestyle expertise there, quite frankly, and it should be take that seriously. I know that doesn't pay the bills. You can't, that's not going to put a roof over your head per se, but these are the things that are actually going to make you happy. These are the habits, these atomic habits, if you will, that are going to change change how other people see you and view you. So be absolutely aware that there is a life for you. Don't go crazy stressing yourself out.
Yeah.
Be methodical. Take care of yourself. Know that you will be successful. You're already listening to this podcast. You're halfway there. So know that you'll be successful. Don't kill yourself. Be kind to yourself. Take care of your mental health. Love the people around you. Take care of your parents. They're not going to be around for long. Look to anybody who needs your help around you when you have the energy. And that's it. That's my advice. If you are a good person, you're going to make it in this world. And, I've told you what I would do. Clark's told you what he would do. And with that, let's wrap it up, Clark.
Yeah, and don't forget, guys, subscribe to our channel. Go like us on at Burn Your Boats Wealth on Instagram, TikTok, we're on all the different socials. And please provide comment. We put a lot of things out there that probably you may disagree with, and I'd love to hear things that you may disagree with. Say, you know what, Clark, that's the stupid thing about working for 7 years. You need to go straight into it at 21 if you have the mentality for it. Please provide feedback. We love to hear it because it creates new episode topics for us in the future. Thank you so much. We love all the feedback we're getting to this point. It's been great, and I feel like it's starting to help people change their mindset. So with that, we'll see you guys next time, and thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Burn Your Boats podcast with Clark Lunt and David Shaw. We would love to hear from you. Please reach out at burnyourboatswealth.com with comments, questions, and if you have a topic you would like Clark and David to discuss on an upcoming episode. We would very much appreciate it if you took the time to rate and review Burn Your Boats podcast on your favorite podcast listening app, and make sure to follow and share on social media. Content in Burn Your Boats podcast is for entertainment purposes only and is not legal or financial advice. Please review our legal disclaimer at burnyourboatswealth.com. Thank you for listening.